The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor, silencing the entire boardroom. Kang Joon-Seok didn't flinch. He simply straightened his Armani cuffs and met his father's furious gaze with cold indifference. "You have 6 months," his father said, voice trembling with rage. "6 months to present a wife, or the company goes to your cousin. I don't care who she is. Find someone." The door slammed. The room emptied. Joon-Seok stared at the broken glass, watching champagne seep into the Persian rug like spilled blood. 32 years old, worth billions, and his entire empire hinged on a wedding ring he'd never wanted. 3 weeks later, he found her. Amara Okoye sat across from him in the private room of an upscale restaurant. Her posture perfect, her dark eyes unreadable. She wore a simple navy dress that somehow made her look more elegant than any woman he'd ever met. No jewelry, no pretense, just quiet dignity that filled the space between them. "Let me be clear," Joon-Seok said, sliding the contract across the table. "This is a business arrangement. Nothing more. You need legal status and financial stability. I need a wife for appearances. 2 years. After that, we divorce quietly, and you receive the settlement we discussed." Amara picked up the document, her slender fingers tracing the clauses without emotion. She read in silence for 5 full minutes while he studied her. African woman in Korea, master's degree in international business, working 3 jobs to stay afloat after her student visa complications. His private investigator had been thorough. She was perfect, intelligent enough to play the part, desperate enough to agree, and completely outside his usual social circle. "No complications. No feelings. Rule number 3, she read aloud, her accent carrying a musical quality that irritated him for reasons he couldn't name. "No romantic involvement of any kind. No physical intimacy beyond what is necessary for public appearances." Exactly. Rule number 7. Neither party will interfere with the other's personal life or daily routine. Correct. She set down the contract and met his eyes directly. "And if one of us breaks these rules? The contract terminates immediately. You forfeit the settlement." Something flickered across her face. Amusement, maybe, or pity. She picked up the pen. "When's the wedding?" 3 weeks. Small ceremony. My family and essential business associates only." She signed without hesitation, her signature bold and unhurried. Joon-Seok felt a strange twist in his chest, quickly dismissed. This was business. He'd made hundreds of deals more complex than this. "One question," Amara said, standing and smoothing her dress. "Do you always buy your way out of problems, Mr. Kang?" He stood too, towering over her by several inches. "Always. It's efficient." "Then this should be simple for you." She picked up her purse. "I'll see you at the wedding." She left without looking back, her heels clicking against marble like a countdown timer he couldn't stop. The wedding was exactly what he'd ordered, elegant, brief, emotionally sterile. Amara wore white lace that transformed her into something ethereal, something that made his business associates whisper appreciatively, and made his jaw tighten for no logical reason. She smiled for photos with perfect composure, said her vows in a steady voice, and kissed him when instructed with such careful detachment that it felt like being kissed by a ghost. At the reception, she charmed his family effortlessly. His grandmother, who'd never approved of anyone, actually laughed at something Amara said. His business partners complimented him on his choice with knowing smirks that made his shoulders tense. "Beautiful wife," Director Kim said, clapping him on the back. "Where did you find her?" "Through mutual acquaintances," Joon-Seok replied, the lie smooth and practiced. "Smart woman too, I hear. International business." "Yes. Lucky man." Kim's eyes followed Amara across the room. "Very lucky." Joon-Seok's hand tightened around his glass. "If you'll excuse me." He found her on the terrace, alone, staring at the Seoul skyline with unreadable eyes. The city lights reflected off her skin like scattered diamonds. "Tired?" he asked. "No." She didn't turn around. "Just thinking. About how strange it is to marry someone and feel nothing." She glanced at him then, something sad and knowing in her expression. Is this what your life is always like? Transactions instead of connections? Transactions are cleaner. Cleaner, she repeated softly. Yes, I suppose they are. Nothing messy. Nothing real. Reality is overrated. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Then this should work perfectly. They moved into his penthouse the next day, 12,000 square feet of cold luxury and carefully curated emptiness. He showed her to the guest wing, 3 rooms and a private bathroom far from his own quarters. This is your space, he said, opening doors to reveal rooms decorated in shades of cream and gray. I won't enter without permission. The household staff will accommodate your schedule. Amara walked through slowly, trailing her fingers along furniture that cost more than most people's cars. It's lovely. The closet has been stocked according to the sizes you provided. Credit cards are in the top drawer. Use them for anything you need. Anything? Within reason. She turned to face him, and for the first time, he saw a spark of something sharp beneath her careful composure. And what's reasonable to you, Mr. Kang? It's Joon-Seok now. We're married. Are we? She tilted her head. Or are we 2 people sharing an address? He had no answer for that. She seemed to know it because she smiled genuinely this time, but with an edge that felt like a challenge. Thank you for the tour, she said. I'll see you at dinner. I eat at the office most nights. Of course you do. She closed the door softly, but it felt like a dismissal that echoed through the empty hallway. The first week passed like a business trip with a polite stranger. They crossed paths in hallways, exchanged pleasant good mornings over coffee they drank separately, and lived entirely parallel lives under the same roof. Joon-Seok told himself it was perfect. Exactly what he'd designed. No complications, no emotions, no mês. Then came the charity gala. You look presentable, he said when Amara emerged in a deep emerald gown that made her skin glow like warm honey. The dress was modest by Seoul standards, high neckline, long sleeves, but it traced her silhouette in ways that made his throat tight. Thank you, she replied with cool amusement. You look very like yourself. In the car, he briefed her on the guest list, who mattered, who to avoid, what topics were safe. She listened with the focused attention of someone preparing for battle, asking sharp questions that revealed she'd done her own research. You're well prepared, he admitted. Did you expect less? I expected nothing. Yes, she said quietly, staring out at the city lights. I'm learning that about you. The gala was Seoul's most exclusive annual event. Old money, new money, and everyone who wanted to be someone. Joon-Seok guided Amara through the crowd with a hand on her lower back. A touch so light it barely registered but felt strangely necessary. She moved beside him with natural grace, smiling and bowing appropriately, her presence somehow both subtle and impossible to ignore. People noticed. Of course they noticed. Mrs. Kang, Director Park said, approaching with interest bright in his eyes. I've heard so much about you. Tell me, what brought you to Korea? Amara's smile was warm but gave away nothing. Education first, then opportunity. Your country has been very welcoming. And now you're part of one of Seoul's most prominent families. Quite a journey. Life is full of unexpected turns, Director Park. Don't you agree? Park laughed, charmed. Joon-Seok found himself standing straighter, his hand pressing more firmly against her back. Possessive. The thought appeared unbidden and unwanted. He released her immediately. Throughout the evening it continued. Men approached her with questions, compliments, barely disguised interest. She handled each interaction with perfect diplomacy, never flirtatious but never cold, walking some invisible line that kept everyone engaged but at distance. Joon-Seok watched, and felt something dark and unfamiliar coiling in his chest. Your wife is quite remarkable, Seo-young said, appearing at his elbow. Where exactly did you 2 meet? Through friends. Must have been quite a courtship. She's not like the women you usually date. Joon-Seok's jaw clenched. No, she's not. Better, Young continued, eyes tracking Amara across the room. Much better. Intelligence and beauty, rare combination. You're a lucky man, Kang.
I'm aware.
If you ever tire of married life. Jung laughed like it was a joke, but his eyes lingered on Amara too long, too openly. Joon-Seok's hand formed a fist at his side. I won't. In the car ride home, silence stretched between them like a third passenger. Amara stared out the window, her profile peaceful and distant. You performed well tonight, he said finally. She turned slowly, eyebrows raised. Performed? That's what this is. A performance. Is that what you think I was doing? Acting? Weren't you? She studied him with those dark, knowing eyes.
No, Joon-Seok.
I was simply being myself. Perhaps you should try it sometime. The words stung more than they should have. He said nothing else until they reached the penthouse, where she disappeared into her wing without saying goodnight. He poured whiskey in his study and tried to understand why the evening bothered him. Jung's comments had been inappropriate but not unusual. Men complimented attractive women at events, it meant nothing. Amara had handled herself perfectly, exactly as he needed her to. Everything had gone according to plan. So why did he want to call Jung and tell him to never look at his wife again? His wife. The words felt strange. Real and unreal at once. He drained the glass and poured another. It was just the stress of maintaining appearances. Nothing more. Certainly not jealousy. Jealousy required emotional investment, and he had none. This was a contract. A business arrangement. He repeated it like a mantra until he almost believed it. The second event came 2 weeks later. A corporate dinner with international investors. Amara wore navy silk that made her look like midnight personified. Her hair swept up to reveal the elegant line of her neck. Joon-Seok found himself staring, then caught himself and looked away sharply. At dinner, she sat beside him, engaging in conversation with an American investor across the table. Her English was flawless, her laugh genuine as she discussed international market trends with an expertise that surprised even him. Your wife is an asset, his father murmured in Korean, leaning close. Smart choice. Joon-Seok nodded, watching Amara gesture animatedly, her passion for the subject evident. An asset. Yes, that's what she was. Nothing more. After dinner, the American investor Marcus, mid-40s, athletic build, expensive watch, approached Amara directly. Mrs. Kang, I have to say, your insights on the African market were fascinating. My company is looking to expand in that region. I'd love to pick your brain further, if you're interested. Amara's eyes brightened. I'd be happy to help, Mr. Marshall. The African market is incredibly diverse and often misunderstood by Western investors. Please call me Marcus. Are you available for coffee this week? I'm in Seoul for another 10 days. Coffee sounds lovely. My wife's schedule is quite full, Joon-Seok interrupted, appearing at Amara's side so quickly he barely registered moving. But perhaps we could arrange a lunch meeting. The three of us. Marcus looked amused. Of course. Whatever works for you both. After Marcus walked away, Amara turned to Joon-Seok with frost in her eyes. What was that? What was what? You interrupted me. Spoke for me. I was clarifying your availability.
No.
She stepped closer, voice low but sharp. You were establishing ownership. Like I'm property to be managed. Don't be dramatic. Rule number 7, Joon-Seok. You don't interfere with my personal life. Or did you forget the contract you wrote? He had no response that didn't sound possessive, so he said nothing. She stared at him for a long moment, something like disappointment crossing her face, before walking away to rejoin the other guests. He stood there, feeling eyes on him, feeling the inexplicable urge to follow her and... What? Apologize? Explain? He did neither. Instead, he retreated to the bar and ordered another whiskey he didn't want. At home that night, she went straight to her wing without a word. He lay awake in his own bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand when this arrangement had become complicated. The coffee meeting with Marcus never happened, but the investor called the house 3 days later asking to speak with Amara directly. Joon-Seok listened from his study as she took the call in the living room, her voice bright with interest. Yes. I'd love to help with your market research. Thursday. That works perfectly. The cafe near Namsen Tower? I know it. See you then, Marcus. Joon-Seok was at his desk before she hung up, scrolling through emails he wasn't reading, his jaw tight enough to ache. Amara appeared in his doorway. I'm meeting Marcus Thursday afternoon, just so you're aware. Fine. It's professional networking, Joon-Seok. Nothing more. I didn't say anything. You didn't have to. Your jaw is clenched so tight I'm surprised your teeth haven't cracked. He forced himself to relax, to look at her with indifference he didn't feel. Have a productive meeting. She studied him like he was a puzzle she couldn't solve. You're the one who wanted this to be business only. You're the one who wrote rules against emotional involvement. So why do you look like you want to forbid me from going? I don't. Liar. The word hung between them, sharp and true. He stood, closing the distance until they were inches apart, until he could see gold flecks in her dark eyes and smell whatever subtle perfume made her scent linger in rooms after she left. What do you want me to say? His voice came out rougher than intended. That I don't like other men looking at you? That I watched Jung IU at the gala and wanted to break his jaw? That the thought of you having coffee with Marcus makes me want to... He stopped, breathing hard. Want to what? She whispered. Want to cancel it. Want to lock you in this penthouse where only I can see you. Want to break every rule I wrote and make this real. Nothing, he said, stepping back. Go to your meeting. I don't care. You're right, she said softly. You don't care. You just hate the idea of not controlling something you paid for. She left before he could deny it. He stood in his study, surrounded by evidence of his success, and felt like he was losing something he'd never actually had. Thursday came. Amara dressed casually but beautifully in a cream sweater and fitted jeans that made her look younger, softer. She barely glanced at him before leaving. Joon-Seok tried to work. He lasted 40 minutes before finding himself in his car, driving toward Namsen Tower, telling himself he just needed air, just needed to clear his head. The cafe was small and intimate, visible through large windows. He parked across the street and sat there like some jealous husband in a drama, watching through the glass as Amara laughed at something Marcus said. She looked happy, animated, more alive than she ever looked at home. Marcus leaned forward, clearly engaged, clearly interested in more than just business advice. And Amara, she smiled, gestured, talked with an ease that made Joon-Seok's chest tight. This was his fault. He'd created this prison of rules and distance, and now he was watching her find connection somewhere else, with someone else. His phone buzzed. A text from Amara? I know you're watching. Go home, Joon-Seok. He looked up. She was staring directly at him through the cafe window, her expression unreadable even at this distance. Marcus turned to look, confused. Joon-Seok started the car and drove away, feeling like a fool. That night, she confronted him in the living room where he'd been pretending to read. This has to stop, she said without preamble. What has to stop? This. She gestured between them. Whatever this is. The watching, the interrupting, the barely concealed hostility toward any man who speaks to me. It's not part of our agreement. I know. Then why? She stopped, studying his face. Oh what? You're jealous. She said it like a revelation, like something impossible suddenly made sense. I'm not. You are. She moved closer, and he saw something in her eyes. Not mockery, but curiosity mixed with something sadder. You're jealous, and you hate it because it means you're feeling something you swore you wouldn't feel. You're imagining things. Am I? She was close now, close enough that he had to consciously keep his hands at his sides. Tell me honestly, Joon-Seok, when you saw me with Marcus today, what did you feel? Nothing. Liar. She reached up and touched his face, her palm warm against his jaw. You felt something. Maybe for the first time in years you felt something real. And it terrifies you. He caught her wrist, but didn't push her away. This isn't part of the contract. No, she agreed softly. It's not. So what do we do about it? Nothing. We do nothing. In 18 months, this ends and we both walk away. Is that what you want? No. The answer rose up so fierce and immediate that it shocked him. No, he didn't want her to walk away. He didn't want Marcus or Jung or any other man to have what he'd been too proud and too afraid to claim. But he said, yes. She dropped her hand, and the loss of contact felt like falling. Then stop watching me like you care. Stop interfering like you have a right to. Be the businessman you claim to be, and let me live my life. Fine. Fine. She turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, the meeting with Marcus was just business. He's happily married with 3 kids. But you didn't ask because you don't trust me. And you don't trust me because this was never meant to be real. She disappeared into her wing. Joon-Seok stood there, surrounded by luxury that suddenly felt like a mausoleum, and wondered when he'd become the villain in his own story. If you're still watching, hit that subscribe button, because this story is about to get even more intense. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The following weeks were torture disguised as normalcy. Joon-Seok threw himself into work, staying at the office until midnight, avoiding the penthouse and the woman who haunted it. When they did cross paths, they were painfully polite, 2 strangers sharing space and nothing else. But he noticed everything. How she started taking evening walks alone, coming back with windswept hair and peaceful eyes. How she spent hours on video calls with someone, laughing in a language he didn't understand. How she seemed lighter, happier, like his absence had freed her. Shouldn't have bothered him. This was the arrangement. Distance. Independence. No involvement. It destroyed him. The breaking point came at his father's birthday celebration. Amara wore gold, a dress that caught light like captured sunlight, that made every eye in the room follow her movement. She stayed close to him for appearances, played the devoted wife perfectly, but there was a wall between them now, invisible but absolute. You look beautiful, he said during a quiet moment on the terrace. Thank you. Amara, don't. She didn't look at him. Whatever you're about to say, don't. We had an agreement. You've kept it. So will I. What if I don't want to keep it anymore? She turned then, and he saw exhaustion in her eyes. You don't get to change the rules now, Joon-Seok. You don't get to push me away for months and then pull me back because you're lonely or bored or feeling whatever this is. It's not boredom. Then what is it? Love. The word appeared in his mind, clear and terrifying. Love. He loved her quiet strength and sharp intelligence, loved how she moved through his world without being consumed by it, loved her dignity and grace and the way she called him out on his bullshit without flinching. He loved her, and he'd spent 6 months denying it, building walls against it, and now she was preparing to leave and he had no idea how to stop her. I don't know, he lied. She smiled sadly. Yes, you do, but you're too afraid to say it. And I'm too tired to wait. A man appeared in the terrace doorway, someone Joon-Seok vaguely recognized from the business community. Young, successful, handsome in an approachable way Joon-Seok had never been. Mrs. Kang, your husband's father is asking for you both. Thank you, we'll be right there. Amara moved toward the door, and the man, what was his name? Kim something, held it open with a smile that lasted too long. You look stunning tonight, if you don't mind me saying. That's kind of you, Mr. Kim. Please just Miho. We're family friends after all. In fact, I was hoping to steal a dance with you later. If your husband permits, of course. He said it looking at Joon-Seok, challenge barely concealed beneath politeness. My wife makes her own decisions, Joon-Seok said coldly. Then what do you say, Amara? One dance. She glanced at Joon-Seok, something testing in her gaze. One dance would be lovely. Joon-Seok watched them walk away together, Miho's hand hovering near her lower back, but not quite touching. Both of them laughing at something he couldn't hear. Something primal and ugly rose in his chest. Not the controlled irritation of before, but raw, consuming jealousy that made his vision narrow and his hands shake. He followed them inside, watched as Miho led her to the dance floor when the music started. Watched as she smiled up at him, as he said something that made her laugh, as he held her with perfect respectability but clear desire. Joon-Seok moved through the crowd like a shark, barely aware of the people he passed. He tapped Miho's shoulder. Cutting in. Miho released her with a knowing smirk. Of course. She's your wife, after all. Joon-Seok pulled Amara close, too close for propriety. His hand splayed possessively across her back. She stiffened in his arms. What are you doing? She whispered. Dancing with my wife. We're beyond pretending, Joon-Seok. You made that clear. I was wrong. She looked up at him, anger and something else warring in her eyes. About what? About everything. The contract. The rules. The idea that I could live with you and not. He stopped, jaw clenched. Not what? Around them, people danced and talked and laughed, oblivious to the conversation unfolding in whispers. The song swelled, something slow and aching that matched the feeling in his chest. Not fall in love with you, he said finally. I was wrong to think I could do that. She stopped moving, stood frozen in his arms in the middle of the dance floor. You don't mean that.
Ido.
I love you, Amara. I've loved you for months, and I've been too much of a coward to admit it. Why now? Her voice shook. Why tell me now after everything? Because I can't watch another man hold you. Can't watch you smile at someone else. Can't keep pretending this is just business when the thought of you leaving makes me want to burn the entire contract and start over. She pulled away, and the loss of her nearly broke him. You're jealous. That's not love, Joon-Seok. That's possession. Then let me prove it's more. Let me show you.
No.
She stepped back, shaking her head. You had 6 months to show me. 6 months to choose vulnerability over control. You didn't. And I won't settle for scraps of emotion just because you finally noticed what you could lose. She walked off the dance floor, leaving him standing alone while couples swirled around him. He felt his father's eyes, felt the weight of everyone's attention, felt the first real panic of his life setting in. He found her in the garden, standing by the fountain with her arms wrapped around herself. Amara, the contract ends in 12 months, she said without turning. I'll fulfill my obligations until then. After that, I'm leaving. Not just the marriage.
Koreo.
I've been offered a position in London. I accepted today. The words hit him like physical blows. You're leaving the country? There's nothing keeping me here. I'm here. She laughed, but there were tears in it. You're not, though. Not really. You're a man in a cage of your own making, and I can't save you from that. Only you can. Tell me how. Tell me what to do. She finally turned, and the sadness in her face was worse than anger. I can't tell you how to be vulnerable, Joon-Seok. I can't teach you how to love without controlling. That's something you have to learn yourself. Then teach me. Give me time. I gave you time. 6 months of it. I was right there, every day, waiting for you to see me as more than an employee or a problem to manage. You didn't. She wiped her eyes. Maybe you can't. Maybe this is all you know how to be. That's not true. Prove it. She stepped close enough that he could see himself reflected in her eyes. Not with words or money or grand gestures. Prove it by becoming someone capable of actually being in a relationship, not just controlling one. How long do I have? 12 months. Then I'm gone regardless. She walked past him back toward the party, leaving him standing in the garden with his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. The next day, Joon-Seok made a decision. He called his therapist, a woman he'd seen once years ago and dismissed as unnecessary. He made appointments, 3 times a week. He started coming home for dinner. At first, Amara retreated to her wing immediately after eating, but he kept showing up, kept trying. He asked about her day, actually listened to her answers, stopped trying to control or manage or fix things. He was terrible at it. Years of emotional lockdown didn't disappear overnight. But he tried. Why are you doing this? Amara asked one evening, finding him reading in the living room instead of hiding in his study. Because you were right. I need to learn. Learn what? How to be human. He set down the book. I've spent my entire life treating relationships like transactions because that's safer, cleaner. But you're not a transaction, Amara. You're He struggled for words. You're everything I didn't know I needed. She sat down across from him, cautious but curious. You can't just decide to change and expect everything to be fine. I know. That's why I'm not asking you to forgive me or take me back or anything else. I'm just asking you to let me try. To let me prove that I can be better. And after? When the contract ends and I leave for London, the thoughts still hurt, sharp and immediate. Then I'll let you go. If that's what you want. No contract holding you here.
No obligación.
Just choice. Something softened in her expression. You'd really do that? Let me go. If it meant you were happy, yes. But I'm hoping. He stopped. Vulnerability still foreign and difficult. I'm hoping that maybe, if I can become someone worthy of you, you might choose to stay. She didn't answer, but she didn't leave either. They sat in comfortable silence. And for the first time in months, it didn't feel like a war. Weeks passed. Joon-Seok kept trying. He learned to ask instead of command, to listen instead of fix, to be present instead of distant. Some days were better than others. Some days he fell into old patterns and had to consciously pull himself back. But Amara noticed. He could see it in how she lingered at breakfast, how she stopped retreating to her wing immediately, how she occasionally smiled at him with something that looked almost like hope. They started talking. Real conversations about childhood and dreams and fears, the kind of intimate exchanges he'd spent his life avoiding. She told him about growing up between two cultures, feeling like she didn't quite belong anywhere. He told her about the weight of expectations, the crushing loneliness of success. I thought if I could control everything, I'd be safe. He admitted one night over wine neither of them was really drinking. But all I did was build a prison. And now I'm trying to break out. Not sure I remember how. She reached across the table and took his hand. First time she'd touched him voluntarily in months. You're doing better than you think. That night, he lay awake remembering the warmth of her hand, the possibility in her eyes, and allowed himself to hope. The annual company gala arrived, the same event where this had all started unraveling a year ago. Amara wore red this time, a color he'd never seen on her, and she looked like fire given form. Ready? He asked, offering his arm. She took it, and the simple gesture felt like victory. Ready. At the gala, the change was obvious. He stayed by her side not to control but to be with her. When men approached, he introduced her proudly, then stepped back and let her shine. When Marcus appeared, still in soul for business, he shook the man's hand without jealousy. Good to see you again, Marcus said. Amara's consulting work for our African expansion has been invaluable. She's brilliant. Joon-Seok agreed, and meant it. Amara glanced at him, surprise and pleasure mixing in her expression. Later, dancing, she said, that was different from last year. I'm different from last year. Are you? Or are you just on good behavior? I'm trying to be better. That's all I can promise. That I'll keep trying. She studied his face like she was memorizing it. The contract ends in 3 months. I know. I need to give London an answer. His heart clenched, but he kept his voice steady. What do you want to do? I don't know yet. She rested her head against his chest, and he held her like she was precious, like she might disappear if he held too tight or not tight enough. Ask me again in 3 months. Those 3 months were the best and worst of his life. Best because Amara slowly, carefully lowered her walls. She let him in, not all the way but enough to show him what they could be. Worst because he knew it might end. Knew she might leave. Knew he'd be the one standing at the airport watching his heart walk away. He told her he loved her again, on a random Tuesday over breakfast. She didn't say it back, but she kissed his cheek and whispered, I know. He met her friends, the people she'd built a life with while he'd been too blind to notice. They were protective of her, skeptical of him, and he didn't blame them. He'd earned that skepticism. He took her to Jeju Island for a weekend. No business obligations, just time. They walked beaches and ate fresh seafood and talked about everything and nothing. On their last night, watching sunset over the ocean, he said, I don't deserve you. No, she agreed. You don't. But that's not really the point, is it? What is the point? The point is whether you love me enough to keep growing. Whether you'll choose to be vulnerable even when it's terrifying. Whether you can be my partner, not my owner. She turned to face him. Can you? I'm trying. Every day, I'm trying. I know. She smiled, and it was full and genuine and beautiful. That's why I'm staying. His heart stopped. Staying? You mean? I turned down London. Well, modified it. I'll consult remotely, but I'm staying in Korea. Staying. She paused, nervous for the first time. Staying with you, if you still want me. He pulled her close, crushing her against him. Feeling tears he didn't try to hide. Want you? Amara. I've never wanted anything more in my entire life. She laughed against his chest. No contract this time. No rules. Just us figuring it out. Just us, he agreed. I love you. Not because I'm jealous or lonely or afraid to lose you. I love you because you're you. Because you saw past my walls and waited for me to find my way out. Because you make me want to be better. I love you too, she said. And the words hit him harder than any business deal. Any success. Any victory he'd ever achieved. I've loved you for longer than I want to admit. I just needed to know you could love me back without trying to own me. Never again, he promised. Partners. Equals. Always. They kissed as the sun disappeared into the ocean, and for the first time in his life, Joon-Seok felt completely, terrifyingly, wonderfully free. Back in Seoul, they burned the contract. Literally. Joon-Seok built a fire in the penthouse fireplace, and together they watched the pages curl and blacken, all those careful rules and stipulations turning to ash. No more contracts, Amara said, watching the flames. No more walls, he agreed. She turned to him, eyes bright with mischief and love. So what now, Kang Joon-Seok? We're just two people with no rules and no plan. That must terrify the businessman in you. Terrifies me completely. He pulled her close, breathing in her scent, feeling her heartbeat against his. And I've never been happier. The months that followed weren't perfect. They fought sometimes. Real fights where they said things they regretted and had to learn how to apologize, how to compromise, how to choose each other even when it was hard. Joon-Seok still struggled with control, with the urge to manage instead of trust. Amara still pulled away when she felt caged, still needed space to be herself. But they learned. Together. He surprised her with small things. Fresh flowers on random Tuesdays, her favorite coffee waiting when she woke up, time carved from his impossible schedule just to be with her. She surprised him too. Cooking dishes from her childhood, teaching him to dance properly instead of just swaying awkwardly, showing him how to laugh at himself. They moved her things from the guest wing into his room. Their room now. The first night she fell asleep in his arms. Joon-Seok lay awake, terrified he'd wake up and find it all had been a dream. Stop thinking so loud, she murmured against his chest. I can hear your brain from here. Sorry. Just. He tightened his arms around her. Just making sure you're real. Very real. She tilted her head up, finding his lips in the darkness. And not going anywhere. His family noticed the change. His grandmother pulled him aside at a family dinner, studying his face with shrewd eyes. You look different, she said in Korean. Different how? Happy. I've never seen you happy before. The observation stunned him into silence. She patted his cheek, something almost tender in the gesture. That girl is good for you. Don't let her go. I won't, he promised. Never again. At work, his colleagues commented on his improved mood, his increased patience. Director Kim, the same man who'd made uncomfortable comments about Amara a year ago, approached him cautiously. Kang, I owe you an apology. The things I said about your wife last year, completely inappropriate.
I'm sorry.
Joon-Seok considered the man, remembered the rage he'd felt, the jealousy that had consumed him. Now he just felt tired of holding grudges. Accepted. But Kim, if you ever speak about any woman that way again, especially my wife, we're done. Business and otherwise. Understood. Completely understood. Amara's consulting business flourished. She worked from home mostly, taking calls with clients across multiple continents, her intelligence and insight making her indispensable. Joon-Seok loved watching her work, the way she commanded respect effortlessly, the way she navigated different cultures with grace. "You're staring again," she said one afternoon, catching him watching from the doorway of her office. "Can't help it. You're magnificent." She rolled her eyes but smiled. "Flattery won't get you out of date night. You promised dinner and a movie. And you'll get it. I'm a man of my word now." "Now?" She raised an eyebrow. "Does that mean you weren't before?" "Before I kept contracts. Now I keep promises. There's a difference." She stood and crossed to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "Yes, there is. And I love that you know that." They went to dinner at a small restaurant in Itaewon. Nothing fancy, just good food and easy conversation. A place where they could be normal, where his name meant nothing and they were just two people in love. Walking home through lamplit streets, hand in hand, Amara said, "Remember when we first got married? When we lived in the same house but existed in different worlds? I try to forget, actually. I was an idiot. You were scared. Same thing." She laughed, the sound echoing off buildings. "No, not the same thing. Everyone's scared of love at first. The question is whether you let fear win or choose to be brave." "You made me brave," he said. "You showed me it was possible."
No.
She stopped walking, turned to face him under a streetlight. "You chose to be brave. I just gave you a reason. There's a difference." He kissed her then, in the middle of the sidewalk, not caring who saw or what they thought. She kissed him back with the same fierce certainty, and he felt it again. That terrifying freedom, that wild joy of loving someone without walls. A year after the contract ended, Joon-Seok came home early from work with a small velvet box in his pocket. He found Amara on their terrace, watching the sunset paint Seoul in shades of gold and amber. "Hey," he said, joining her at the railing. "Hey yourself. Thought you had meetings until 8. Cancelled them. Wanted to be here." She studied him, reading something in his expression. "What's going on? Remember when we first met? In that restaurant, signing a contract that reduced marriage to a business transaction. Hard to forget. I was so sure I had everything figured out. Rules and clauses and timelines. Everything controlled and contained." He pulled out the box, watching her eyes widen. "I want to ask you something, but first I need you to understand. There's no contract this time.
No obligations.
Just a question, and whatever answer you give will be the right one." Joon-Seok. He opened the box, revealing a ring. Not the massive diamond his money could buy, but a simple band with a single stone that caught the sunset and threw it back in rainbow fragments. "Will you marry me? Really marry me this time? No rules, no end date, no walls. Just us, choosing each other every day for the rest of our lives." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she was smiling, radiant and beautiful in his. "Yes, yes, of course yes." He slid the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "I don't deserve you. We've been over this. That's not the point." "What is the point?" "The point is that you love me enough to keep growing, to stay vulnerable even when it's hard, to choose partnership over control." She pulled back to look at him. "And I love you. Not the perfect version you tried to be. The real one. Flaws and fears and all. Even when I'm impossible? Especially then." They stood on the terrace as the sun completed its descent, as Seoul's lights began their nightly bloom, as the world continued spinning around two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way. The second wedding was nothing like the first. Small and intimate, just close friends and family, held in his grandmother's garden with flowers Amara had chosen and vows they'd written themselves. No contract to sign afterward, no rules to follow. Just promises made freely, love given without conditions. When the officiant pronounced them married, Joon-Seok kissed his wife, really his wife now, and felt the final pieces of his old self fall away. The man who'd needed control, who'd been terrified of feeling, who'd reduced love to a transaction. That man was gone. In his place stood someone better. Someone brave enough to be vulnerable. someone worthy of the woman in his arms. I love you, he whispered against her lips. I love you too, she whispered back. My husband, my partner, my home. At the reception, as they danced to music that actually meant something this time, his grandmother approached with knowing eyes. This is different from the first wedding, she observed in Korean. Everything is different now, Joon-Seok agreed, watching Amara laugh with her friends across the room. Good. That first wedding was beautiful but empty, like a shell with nothing inside. She patted his arm. This one has soul, because you finally let her see yours. After the reception, after the guests had left and the garden had emptied, Joon-Seok and Amara sat on the stone bench where they'd first talked about ending the contract. Remember sitting here? Amara asked, leaning against his shoulder. When I told you I was leaving, when you looked like your world was ending. My world was ending. You were my world by then, even if I was too stupid to fully realize it. Not stupid, just learning. She kissed his jaw. We both were. And now we keep learning. Together. She took his hand, interlacing their fingers. No contract, no rules, just us, figuring it out as we go. Sounds terrifying. It is. She smiled up at him, eyes full of love and mischief and promise. And I can't wait. They sat in the garden as night deepened, as stars appeared overhead, as the air cooled and filled with the scent of flowers and possibility. Two people who'd started as strangers bound by paper, who'd become enemies bound by pride, and who'd finally become partners bound by choice. The contract had been fake, clinical, designed to protect them from feeling anything real. But somewhere between the signatures and the jealousy, between the walls and the vulnerability, something true had emerged. Something worth fighting for, worth changing for, worth building a life around. Love. Real, messy, terrifying, beautiful love. And this time it would last forever. If the story touched your heart, do me a favor. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what you thought. Did the jealousy get you? Did you feel the slow burn? Let me know. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? We've got more stories like this coming. And trust me, you don't want to miss them. Hit that subscribe button and join our community. Until next time, remember, the best love stories aren't perfect. They're real.